Well, hello, folks. I am Jeffey Daugherty back here for another edition of the Jeffey Daugherty Show. And I've got some momentous things to share with you today, some great news, some new things, and also some earth-shattering, groundbreaking news of the prophetic and New World Order type. And I know you hear a lot of hype, but this really is the real McCoy. It may be the biggest thing since the Protestant Reformation. Now, if you know anything about me or follow me at all, you know that last Sunday night I was on the Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie show. 2 hours last Sunday night on a national radio program. It was great. It really was. We had an excellent interview. It was only 2 hours. It was supposed to be 3, so we didn't quite get to everything that we wanted to get to, but nonetheless, it really was a fantastic interview. And you can see that on my website at apostlepaulantichrist.com, apostlepaulantichrist.com, or on imnck.com, either one of those websites. So go there and listen to the show. It's 2 hours, stereo quality, really, really good stuff. Now, there's also an Apostle Paul Antichrist fact sheet that I made available to you. All you have to do is click on the icon that says fact sheet. It'll take you over to the contact page. Just put in there you want the fact sheet. I'll be more than happy to send it to you. And also yesterday, a couple days ago, I started working on the Testament of Jesus and his apostles, which is going to be a literal English rendering of what we call the New Testament into literal English language, omitting all of the Pauline writings and those referring to blood sacrifice. You know about the Pauline part of it, why we wouldn't be including that. And we'll be talking more and more about the blood sacrifice part of it. I have completed compiling the book of James. That is available now for free on my website for you to download, or I'll send it to you. It's not actually a download. And that again would be on imnck.com. And if you go to apostlepaulantichrist.com, go to where the Coast to Coast download is, why it's in the very same place. So you'll be able to go ahead and get a hold of the Apostle Paul Antichrist fact sheet and the new book of James, the first book chronologically in the New Testament, and it is translated. It's not really translated, it's compiled straight from the original Greek, word for word, into modern English, into our regular English, omitting all of the Pauline works, this whole Testament of Jesus will, and also omitting anything that supports the concept of blood sacrifice. So that is there on the website. Also, I'm very happy to have just received a call to go on a radio show in Rochester, New York. I can't remember the call letters of the station. I'll let you know. It's not until April 23rd. It's 10:40 a.m. in New York. I believe it's WYSL in Rochester, New York. April 23rd will be going on at 5 p.m. So we're looking very forward to that. And you're going to see me going on to lots and lots of radio programs and television programs. And if you know of any producers or know of any contact information to any media outlets, please go to Apostle Paul Antichrist or imnck.com. Click on the contact and let me know of them, please, because we want to get this message out to as many people as we can. Speaking of getting messages out, my goodness, folks, I don't understand why more people aren't talking about this. Well, I do understand, but it's just, it beggars description how something of this magnitude can take place and it not be the top story everywhere. Late in January, I believe it was on the 21st. I don't have any notes with me, so this is off the cuff. On January 21st, I believe, Pope Francis, that's right, the Pope Francis sent a 8 or 9 minute videotape message to a man named Kenneth Copeland. Now, Kenneth Copeland is an American Pentecostal evangelist. He's kind of the name it and claim it leader of that band. Kenneth Copeland's very, very popular. To give you an example, Joel Osteen's probably #1 as far as TV preachers. But then you have Benny Hinn and Kenneth Copeland. So those three guys, they're in a tight competition for fourth member of the Trinity. But Kenneth Copeland, very, very big guy. He was having a conference of pastors and leaders at his headquarters. I believe he's in Fort Worth. And the Pope, sends an 8-minute message to Kenneth Copeland. That in and of itself is pretty huge. But the content of that message was even, it just blows your mind. The content of the message was, and I'll paraphrase, you can find it on YouTube or on the internet. Just Google Pope sends video to Kenneth Copeland and you'll find it. And the Pope says basically, I love you, you're my brother, I bless you, gives a papal blessing. Man, those used to cost a lot of money. And then the Pope says something that's staggering. He says, we have to do whatever we can to work together, to get back together in unity. There's actually an organization that's been started, ARC. It's something called the ARC. I don't really want to give it a bunch of publicity. But they're literally trying to put the Catholic Church and the Pentecostals back together. Now, I don't know if you understand who the Pentecostals are. You know, I was a Pentecostal evangelist for 20 years. And the Pentecostals have always been like the Jesuits of the Protestant movement. The militant ones, the hardcore ones, and the ones that'll do the, the dirty deeds. That, like the Jesuits are kind of the army of Jesus, I guess. The Pentecostals would be the Jesuits of the Protestant movement. And there's no way in the world that the Pentecostals would ever have accepted this even 10, 15 years ago. Let me give you an example. Late 80s to mid 90s. I can't remember exactly when it was. The whole charismatic Catholic thing was getting geared up. That was people in Catholic churches that were speaking in tongues. And that was one of the big, and still is one of the huge drawbacks in the charismatic movement, the Pentecostal movement. If you speak in tongues, they'll have fellowship with you no matter what you do when you're not speaking in tongues. And these Catholics were getting, this gift of tongues, they were saying, and they wanted to have this, there was a thing called the Conference on the Holy Spirit. And there were going to be Catholic priests there that were preaching and ministering. And Jimmy Swaggart at the time had the largest church in the area there in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Keep in mind, at this time, he was on more TV stations than ABC, NBC, and CBS combined. And Jimmy just said, no, I am not going to have Catholics in my church preaching from my platform. It's not right. He wasn't saying preaching hatred towards Catholics, but he was saying we are not Catholic. We do not believe in Catholic doctrine. We believe it's wrong, and we will not have it in our church. And he was applauded in the Pentecostal movement. And it made him he was fourth member of the Trinity until, things happened. But, I think Swaggart deserves kudos for that, and he certainly saw what was forthcoming. But the fact that the Pope sends this message to Kenneth Copeland, we love you, you're our brothers, let's get together, let's have unity, let's reunify. And then Copeland has this guy who's leading this unity movement videotape a message back to the Pope where Copeland says, we love you, you're our brothers, we do want to get together. And this whole auditorium, probably somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 pastors, they all stand up, they're lifting their hands, they're speaking in tongues, they're doing the whole charismatic cha-cha, the whole thing. Copeland's up there speaking in tongues for an extended amount of time, and boy, would I love to see a linguist look at that 3 or 4 minutes of tongues that Kenneth Copeland was speaking in, a forensic linguist, and give us an idea of what he was speaking and what he was saying. Because, I was Pentecostal for 20 years. I've heard a lot of tongue speaking. I've done a lot of tongue speaking. And that didn't sound right to me. There was something odd. There was something off. There was something irregular. Somebody's saying, Jeff, anytime you speak in tongues, that's odd. It's off. It's irregular. Granted, but this, just something stunk. It was fishy. And this from a guy that did it for 20 years. So something was going on there. But folks, why is this such a big deal? Well, because the Protestants broke off from the Catholics, you remember. And there was killings and death and bloodshed. And the Protestants are just that, protesting what they believe are false doctrines within the Catholic Church. And now we're willing to lay that all aside. Or I'm not part of the Pentecostals anymore. They're willing to lay that all aside and buddy up with the Catholics. Well, biblical prophecy, the book of Revelation, has always talked about there being one world religion. And when you got 1 billion Catholics and many million Pentecostals who are maybe even going to bring in the rest of the Protestants who bring up to 1 billion, when all of a sudden you get 2 billion people aligned in a church, that's half the population of the earth. And wow, then things really start getting interesting. And let's face it, right now, they're basically linked up. Catholic doctrine, Protestant doctrine, it all came from the Nero-Pauline matrix. If you want to know more about that, get the fact sheet from ApostlePaulAntichrist.com and buy the book and read it. It's worth it. That book tells you about the beginning of the Nero-Pauline matrix. That book tells you, Apostle Paul Antichrist, tells you about the beginning of the New World Order. It tells you about the beginning of this control matrix, that this social, this political, this religious control matrix, whose tentacles now reach into every area of our lives. This police state, this New World Order, this prison planet, if you, with apologies to Alex Jones, it all started back with Paul and Nero and this Nero-Pauline matrix. This book tells you about the beginning of this matrix. And today, folks, I believe we're living and seeing events which could be the culmination of this Nero-Pauline matrix. If they get together and they join into one church, you are talking about huge fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Now, I'm not sure that Revelation is, 100% tried and true, and that we ought to believe everything. And I'm certainly not of the Left Behind crowd. If I had a dollar bill, I could show you the real motivation of the Left Behind books. Yeah, I said it. It was money. And if these guys get together, if they're willing to lay aside doctrines that for hundreds of years people were killed over, to just gather together and be friends, folks, we are beginning to see the beginning of the end. And interestingly enough, that was January 21st that the exchange of videos took place. And then on March the 16th, I believe, so less than 2 months later, the Vatican invites all of the world's leading scientists, astroscientists, astrophysicists, whatever the guys are and the ladies that look through telescopes and things of that nature, invited them all to the Vatican Observatory for a great big conference. So, when I was on Coast to Coast and George was pushing me about extraterrestrials and what I thought about it, is Jesus one, are they coming back? Well, when you've got the Catholics and the Pentecostals, and it's funny, and I just saw it, Pope Francis was a Jesuit, first Jesuit Pope. Think about that. The most militant sect of Catholicism, the Jesuits, who Francis is a member of, or at least was until he became Pope. I don't know how Catholic hierarchy actually works, but the most militant sect of Catholicism is about to get in bed with the most militant sect of Protestantism. Man, if you think politics makes strange bedfellows, look at religion. They're beating their swords into plowshares, folks, the Pentecostals and the Jesuits. They're putting down their weaponry. They're putting down their subterfuge, and they're joining hands and singing Kumbaya. It's Pope and the Cope ready to bring you the one world church for the last days. And we just had a big meeting up at the observatory. So, man, is there somebody coming back from the stars that will receive and lift up as a leader? Or is it more simple and more sinister than that? I've got some ideas I'm going to be fleshing out here over the next few weeks about blood sacrifice, about what this Antichrist of the end time. We identified the original Antichrist, the first one opposing Christ, as Thomas Jefferson also said in 1820. So he said it a few years before I did. We identified the first Antichrist, the Apostle Paul. We're about ready, I think, to be able to identify the last one. And folks, it will absolutely blow your mind. We have been sold and duped. This makes 9/11 look like front page news that, oh yeah, we know it was a setup and it wouldn't be anything to us. This makes the conspiracy of 9/11 look like it was as pure as the driven snow. And I know that's quite a statement. And I know that sometimes, with people that lost their lives or loved ones in 9/11, we get a little too flippant about it. And I apologize if I offend you and hurt you. I don't talk about your people. I'm just talking about that event. And it is tragic that we lost folks. But I mean, if you're still believing that 9/11 happened as told, I mean, come on. Wake up and smell the coffee. Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey. There's just no way. But this conspiracy and this false flag and this operation that you're about to see, and I really need to get on Alex Jones to talk about this. I'm trying to find a way to get a hold of them. If you know, let me know. It's going to beggar description. It's going to make everything else look teeny tiny by comparison, because you're about to see 2,000 years of social, political, religious intrigue combine, and you're about to see the culmination of all things. I think you're about to see what everybody's been aiming for come together. It's not going to happen the way you think it is, and I don't think it's going to happen the way they think it is, and I don't think it's over. We look around and we get depressed and we get discouraged, but folks, don't count us out. I'm telling you, don't count us out. But the fact that the Pope and the Pentecostals are talking about unity, and have already set up an organization for it, ought to wake you up and say, wow, the excrement is about to hit the rotating appliance, folks. It is getting to real stuff here real quickly. Wow. Keep your eyes on ApostlePaulAntichrist.com. Keep your eyes on IamNCK.com as we roll out more books in the testament of Jesus and his apostles, the modern day direct rendering from the original Greek into English in chronological order as the New Testament was revealed, and minus the Pauline writings and those supporting blood sacrifice. Keep your eyes open for that. Keep your eyes open on my appearance tab on IamNCK.com. We were just on the Feet to Fire show. We were just on Coast to Coast. Coming up on, I think it's WISL 1040 AM in Rochester, New York. I'm also have been talking. We're gonna be on the Paranormal Podcast. We're just looking to set up the time for that. So lots of good stuff coming, getting this message out. I hope that didn't show up across the video, because we are running out of battery juice here at the NCK studios. But at any rate, folks, by the way, NCK is New Cosmic Knowledge. I'm Jeffey Daugherty, and we'll be back soon with another message or you'll hear me again on the radio, various and sundry places, and we're also lining up television appearances as well. So in the interim, find me on Facebook under Jeff A. Daugherty. Find me on Twitter under @NC Find me at www.imnck. I am N like Nancy, C like Kilo, C like Charlie, K like Kilo.com, and ApostlePaulAntichrist.com. Folks, wake up, buck up, get ready, and be encouraged. This is Jeffey Daugherty, as always, wishing you peace and light.